Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's time for Under 30. Today we got a special guest joining us. That's Kevin Green, Senior Markets Correspondent for the Schwab Network. Good afternoon to you, KG. Let's talk Riot. Anything that's even been close to this world of blockchain and digital assets has been exciting to look at. Talk to me about Riot and what's particularly got your attention today.
Well, we are seeing the shares pop here a little bit after an announcement that Starboard Value has actually taken a substantial stake in the company here and actually trying to move the leadership staff into trying to focus more on artificial intelligence, trying to redirect maybe some of their efforts when it comes to Bitcoin mining and looking at some of these hyperscalers as an opportunity to not only provide power, but also maybe to provide some of the infrastructure in order to power these data centers and also to potentially train models. Now, this is something that is not new. Some other Bitcoin miners are also looking at trying to assist with cloud management and also, once again, kind of looking at the data center side here. And this is why you're seeing the shares pop, maybe some optimism, because when you're looking at Bitcoin miners, yes, it has been a lucrative business, but every time you see that halving and technology gets better and better, it becomes a lot tougher in order for a lot of these miners to really profit in a meaningful way like they saw at the beginning of their business here. So that's where the optimism's coming from. The other thing too that's very interesting, Starboard actually also makes a mention that they could also be an electricity provider, and that's something that Riot is really not known for. So if you're kind of looking at this business, obviously they have these big Bitcoin mining campuses and rigs, and it demands a lot of power. But in Texas, if there's too much strain on the grid from ERCOT, which basically is the regulator out in Texas, they'll actually pay Riot Platforms to basically tone down the amount of mining that they're doing. And so it has actually been a pretty lucrative business. In fact, if you remember in September of last year, Texas had this huge heat wave. Riot made a boatload of money, about $31.7 million, just to kind of curtail their operations for the time being and to release some of the pressure on the grid. So that's also another area that they could find an opportunity in because of the data center demand is so high.
Kevin, I have to say that the grid, the energy grid, the needing help energy grid has been one of my favorite conversations to have as of late, because I think it's somewhat underappreciated. And so I think this is such a good point. I'm curious then, because we talk a lot about the energy world and the obviously crypto and blockchain world under a new administration. So is there concerns for this grid or what we're expecting it to be the Trump administration in a month? Like, what does that mean for these various energy suppliers and also a name like Riot, who is exposed to, the energy market, but also is in, I'd say, flux with wanting to expand its operations, wanting to mine, but then also having to keep in mind that they're not the only ones that are occupying a really good portion of that energy grid right now.
Yeah, so there's two answers to that. The first one is the fact that energy demand is going to go up. If you kind of look at the incremental increases in capacity by the EIA compared to what the expectation is for data centers for the remainder of next year, or the additional needs for next year and kind of moving up until 2030, there is enough capacity that's going to be added. The key reason why I say there's two answers there, the location of these data centers is going to be the key. And so you might actually see these data centers pop up in the most rare areas that have maybe 1,000 people to 2,000 people living there, because it won't strain the national grid so much. When you look at Riot Platforms in Texas, Texas is not on a national grid. They have maybe one outlet from Southern California in order for them to actually obtain electricity, but they're pretty much centralized themselves or kind of cut off from the national grid. So when they see a strain, there's not much that they can do outside of asking people to stop consuming as much, which is where you do see Riot having a little bit of leverage, because they need to operate their own business, and Texas basically pays for them not to operate their business in times of strain. And Riot can actually kind of take these purchasing agreements, these pre-purchase agreements for electricity, and kind of flip them a little bit more in the market to maybe some of these hyperscalers. The electricity market is just like the stock market, basically just for institutional traders. That's where Riot actually can benefit here over the long term if you do see some data centers propping up in Texas, some meaningful ones that are going to need a lot of electricity.
And I'm glad you brought this to our attention today, because I think it's fascinating the way they were basically paid to cease operations. That's wild to me, and I think we might see that actually happen more into the new year. But appreciate it, as always, Kevin Green, Senior Markets Correspondent for the network.